Good morning and welcome to the January 22nd, 2019 meeting of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. Welcome. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Bronson?
Here.
Supervisor Christie?
Here.
Supervisor Miller?
Here.
Supervisor Valadez?
Present.
Chairman Elias?
Presente.
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. We have Pastor Gilbert Garcia from Son Life Chapel here today, and thank you for coming, Pastor. He's going to offer the invocation, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Supervisor Bronson this morning. If everyone who can would please rise. Pastor, please.
Thank you, Lord. Lord, I want to thank you for being so good to us in Pima County. We pray, Lord God, for every one of our supervisors. We thank you for their leadership. We pray for your wisdom to be given to them and your grace and your favor in this community and beyond. We pray that everything that they do today would be an acknowledgement of the welfare of our community. We thank you, Father, for our police, our mayor. We pray for our city. We thank you again for this beautiful day, and we pray for your guidance today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Have a nice day. We appreciate you being here with us this morning. Just a second. I'm going to do the changes, and then you can do. I'm going to do one, and then you can do yours, because it's more appropriate. We have some changes to the agenda this morning. On page 3, item 11, procurement, unfinished business. Staff requests this item be removed from the agenda. On page 5, item 18, development services. This is a hearing, comprehensive plan amendment, case number P18CA00007. Staff requests this item be continued to the Board of Supervisors meeting of April 16, 2019. And on the addendum agenda, page 2, item 7, procurement award, master agreement number MAPO19105. Staff requests this item be continued to the Board of Supervisors meeting of February 19, 2019. Hearing no objections, those will be the changes to today's agenda. I'm going to take a moment of personal privilege just to thank everybody in our community for getting out for the Martin Luther King March yesterday and all the activities that we had this weekend. They were profoundly beautiful and especially important to all of us right now in this time in our country, in our place, and in our city. So I just wanted to thank everybody for that. They were very nicely attended. Supervisor Christie, you wanted a moment of personal privilege as well, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take a moment to remember and acknowledge the passing of a community leader who left us at age 95 earlier this month, Schuyler W. Leininger. And it should be noted that this very Board of Supervisors in 2016 presented Mr. Leininger with the honor of proclaiming Schuyler Leininger Day, and it's very easy to see why. He graduated from Tucson High School in 1940 and the University of Arizona in 1947. His university education was interrupted when he served his country in World War II in the 1st Cavalry, and he remained in the Army Reserves until he retired as a colonel. Mr. Leininger purchased the resort hotel, the Lodge on the Desert, from his parents in 1947 and was its owner for 50 years. And in 1997, he donated it to the University of Arizona to establish the Leininger Family Endowment Fund for Excellence. During his time at the Lodge, he worked diligently to provide outstanding lodging while promoting tourism for Tucson and the state of Arizona. He was also a long-standing member of the State Board of Tourism Resort Committee and served on the Tucson City Council in 1975 to 76 and chaired the Civil Service Commission. Mr. Leininger worked diligently to improve the profession of lodging and tourism, philanthropies, and the schools he attended. Loyalty, caring, and hard work were important aspects of his good character. He leaves a legacy of civic and community involvement. He was a member and past president of the Rotary Club of Tucson, the University of Arizona Advisory Board of the College of Business, the Advisory Board of the School of Theater, Film, and TV, the Executive Committee of the National Board of Advisors for the Eller College of Management, the Foothills Forum, and was founding member of the Breakfast Club of Tucson. Since its inception, he supported the Tucson Wildlife Center, and he served on the Tucson High Badger Foundation and was elected to the Badger Hall of Fame. Among many honors he received was an Ambassador of Tourism Award from Governor Bruce Babbitt and the Copper Letter of Outstanding Citizen of Tucson by Mayor Lou Murphy. Mr. Chairman, could I ask that we stand for just a brief moment to remember Mr. Leininger's passing? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Christie. Well remembered. I remember working on some printing for Mr. Leininger over there at my father's print shop back when he ran for city council. And it was fun. So we got to meet a lot of those old people running for office there in my dad's business over the years. But Mr. Leininger will be very fondly remembered in our community. Pause for pause. We have Boba here who brought her toy with her. I was told this morning she would not leave without her toy. And I thought that's a lot like the District 5 supervisor, but I have it over here in the drawer behind us. No one gets to see it.
Well, he's absolutely right. She would not leave without her toy this morning, so we just brought her along for the ride. Boba is 2 years old, and she checks pretty much every box. She is housebroken. Her kennel was spotless when I took her out this morning, and then as soon as we went outside, she used the bathroom. So very housebroken, great with kids. She's good with men and women, and she's pretty non-reactive to dogs. We went on a walk with the other dogs at PAC, and she pretty much ignored the rest of them. So she's kind of the catch that you're all looking for. She just needs to find the right home. And we have an exciting promotion coming up this week at Pima Animal Care Center. We have the Find Your Hidden Gem sale. So it's in honor of the gem show that will be going on around Tucson. And at PAC, we're going to have this giant plastic treasure chest full of plastic gems and coins and crowns. And you pick something out, you bring it up to the adoption lobby, and you find out what your discount is. You can get anything from $5 off to a full free adoption. So if you know anyone who's looking to do this starts January 24th, and it goes through the gem show, which is February 17th. So, and that means you could get Boba here for free. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
So, nobody wants to adopt the dog, Mike? I'm just kidding. Thank you so much for bringing Boba down here, and hopefully she'll get adopted this week. And seems like a great deal. Great dog. Very nicely behaved. She's friendly. All right, so we have one presentation to Carrie Durham and Greg Taylor from the Heart Walk and the American Heart Association. Second. Motion and a second. Discussion. Objections? Hearing none. Motion carries. Supervisor Valadez is going to read the proclamation for us today. And if you'd please come forward. I take it you're Carrie Durham.
I'm sorry, Greg was unable to attend.
That's okay.
Thank you for being here to accept this proclamation, and let me read it so we can share it with everyone. Whereas the American Heart Association is committed to increasing public awareness of the heart threats of cardiovascular disease, and each year holds the annual Heart and Stroke Walk to create awareness, encourage an active life, to educate and raise vital funds for groundbreaking research, and whereas the #1 cause of death for Arizonans is cardiovascular disease, and nearly 960,000 Americans die each year from heart disease and strokes. And whereas Sudden cardiac arrest strikes without warning, and each day more than 95% of Americans who suffer cardiac arrest die before reaching the hospital, resulting in about 700 deaths each day, or about 250,000 deaths annually. And whereas sudden cardiac arrest victims stand a much better chance of survival if a sequence of emergency response actions called the chain of survival is initiated immediately. And whereas calling 911, knowing CPR, and having access to automated external defibrillators, AEDs, are all vital links in the chain of survival. And whereas the American Heart Association is urging all Americans to be healthy for good, having access to the 4 pillars: eat smart, be well, add color, and move more. And whereas the Heart and Stroke Walk is a fundraising event that is free to the public, participants will have opportunities for health and blood pressure screenings, fun interactive games, healthy food choices, and community support. And whereas the Heart and Stroke Walk will provide the opportunity to educate thousands of attendees at Reed's Park's Demister Outdoor Performance Center on April 27th, 2019 at 5 p.m. And whereas the American Heart Association is the largest voluntary not-for-profit organization whose mission is to reduce disability and death from cardiovascular disease. And whereas the American Heart Association is currently funding $1.7 million in Pima County grants. And whereas the County of Pima and the American Heart Association share a common interest in promoting health, now therefore be it resolved that the Pima County Board of Supervisors hereby proclaims Saturday, April 27th, 2019 to be American Heart Association Day, and encourages all Pima County residents to participate in events and trainings to increase awareness of the warning signs of cardiovascular disease and the need to make healthy life choices in addition to knowledge of how to care for a victim. Passed and adopted this 22nd day of January 2019.
Thank you all so very much for this wonderful proclamation. It reminds us, and me personally, who has properties in both Ms. Miller and Bronson districts, that you are and care very much about your community. Thank you so very much. I challenge you to have a team in each of your districts, and I will leave that paperwork with you. But thank you, and all of you here are a wonderful testament of how important our communities are. So thank you so very much. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate all the work you do. And
Thank you so much.
okay, very good. Thank you, Supervisor. We're on to call to the public. And our first speaker is going to be Christopher Cole. Mr. Cole, if you please come forward and give us your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the board. Thank you for spending your time here with us today, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Just in case there's somebody here that doesn't know it, I'm Christopher Cole. I'm chair of the Pima County Libertarian Party. Read a news report the other day. The county is getting rid of laying off about 36 workers, and according to the report, if I remember correctly, out of the transportation department. You know, the roads are so bad, that's really a bad choice. If you're going to lay off 36 people, how about laying them off out of the publicity department or propaganda department or the Chuck Huckleberry cheering department or whatever it is you want to call them? Because laying off people out of the transportation department, the people that actually fix the broken roads when they can, is counterproductive. It's petulance. I'm kind of reminded of a 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum. I didn't get my way, so I'm going to make things worse. Pima County wastes a lot of money buying and overpaying for property, and that money could have been spent better on the roads. Pima County wastes a lot of money on crony deals, renting out county property at less than market rates. That money could have been used on the roads. And spending money on the roads is an attraction for business. Business that pays taxes, hires people. Really, this is bad management. You need to fix this. And you need to fix the roads. I mean, stop with the crony deals, okay? I'm going to harp on that. I always do, right? Fix the roads. Hire those 36 people back. And if you need to let somebody else go, okay, fine. There's other places you can do it, and it's not going to hurt as much. At least not hurt the public as much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cole. Appreciate you being here. Our next speaker is going to be Roger Score. Mr. Score, if you'd please come forward and give us your name for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak, and thank you very much for being here with us today, and we appreciate you spending your time with us, sir. Please proceed.
Hello, Board. My name's Roger Score, and I'm here to address who's influencing you. Where does your money come from? We hear all these rumors, and boy, they're hot on the trail. They're going to prove our president, his election was influenced by Russia. Well, I don't see people from Russia rushing across our border. I don't see a lot of people from Russia over here selling heroin to our children. I don't see a lot of people from Russia coming over here and being involved in the sex trade. But I do see you people protecting open borders. The border that allowed 90% of the heroin to come into this country. The drugs that killed over 72,000 Americans last year. I do see you lobbying for that. So I want to know, whose interests do you have at heart? Do you have the American people's heart at interest? I heard you last time I was here claiming that people on government assistance, that their checks were going to be delayed, and it's going to be hard times for them. I see the media crying out that federal employees are getting a delayed paycheck. They tried to say they're not getting their check. Well, they're getting a check. It's just delayed. But the 36 workers that are supposed to be fixing our roads, instead of getting a paycheck, you bought a bowling alley. You put over $25 million worth of our tax money towards a Giffords Memorial downtown. You gave her husband millions of dollars for his flight to nowhere, his balloon debacle. Steve Christie got a golf course out in Green Valley. These people ain't got food on their table, and our roads ain't getting fixed. So I want to know, whose interest do you have at hand? You can afford to pay a lobbyist to go to Phoenix, to the Capitol, and attempt to raise the sales tax on us, to kill more jobs in this community, so more people ain't got a paycheck on their table, so then they get involved in selling drugs, sex trafficking, to feed their families. But what about me? What do you got for me, the American citizen, the taxpayer? Who do you represent?
You've used up all your time, Mr. Score. Thank you for being here with us today, sir. Our next speaker is going to be Jerry Ottoboni. Thank you very much for being here, Ms. Ottoboni, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors. If you could give us your name for the record, we'd appreciate it.
Good morning, Chairman Elias and the Board of Supervisors. My name is Jerry Ottoboni, and I live in Oro Valley. Well, I see Mr. Huckleberry is missing today. Over 20 years of not fixing the roads, like a child spending money on his pet projects, but not with his money. The money belongs to the taxpayers. May he's up with his lobbyists to the legislature trying to get them to change the law that raises the taxes from a majority vote to minority vote. So therefore, again, a childish move for his project. Also, no increase for the sheriffs. Then taking away a bowling alley, the Golden Pins, and that's from the handicapped people who've received much enjoyment and have for years. He obviously doesn't care about disabled people. More about his pet projects, and again, like a child. He needs to be replaced by a younger, smarter administrator who knows how to live within their means and their budget and not spend taxpayers' money on pet projects like a child. Secondly, 36 employees. Where'd that go? And I believe last year Supervisor Miller suggested an even better idea. It's called, what's it called? Trying to think the name of it. When you, what? Attrition. Thank you so much. I couldn't think of that. Anyway, it's called attrition. Therefore, which would have been less stressful and a much better idea if you'd listened to her. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ottoboni. We appreciate you being here. Our next speaker is going to be Keith Van Heineken. Mr. Van Heineken, thank you for being here. We appreciate you being here with us. And Mr. King is going to help read your statement today, I assume?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. King. Always a gentleman.
Thank you. Good morning, Supervisors. On behalf of Mr. Keith Van Heineken, if I were stupid, I'd believe the Pima County propaganda ministry and these incompetent Huckleberry hounds. If I were stupid, I'd believe the left-wing media mob. If I were stupid, I'd be a racist. If I were stupid, I'd be a misogynist. If I were stupid, I'd believe abortion is moral. If I were stupid, I think Democrat big city ghettos are fine for other people. If I were stupid, I'd think socialism is cool, like Raul Grijalva. If I were stupid, I'd hate the USA. If I were stupid, I'd think 30 million illegal aliens are just visiting. If I were stupid, I'd be a gabby gun grabber too. If I were stupid, I'd listen to Democrats because they tell me how smart they are. If I were stupid, I would think TV was real. If I were stupid, I'd love some Cambodian communism, please. If I were stupid, I'd be horrified by the weather. If I were stupid, I'd be offended. If I were stupid, I'd have no need for family, God, or country. If I were stupid, I'd worship the corrupt United Nations. If I were stupid, I'd say Israel is the problem. If I were stupid, I'd blame Russia. If I were stupid, I'd care about your genitals and personal problems. If I were stupid, I'd enjoy other people's delusions more. If I were stupid, I'd ignore my over 5 decades of memories. If I were stupid, I'd believe the total U.S. debt can be paid. If I were stupid, I would predict a happy, joy future for everyone. If I were stupid, a full transcript will be given to the Pima County Clerk after being fully redacted for names, addresses, profanity, Latin accusations, and history, as well as facts, figures. Love, Keith Van Heineken. If I were a Democrat, by Keith Van Heineken, January 21st, 2019, Pima County, Arizona.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of
Appreciate you
Mr.
being
Van
here. Our next speaker is going to be Russell Trask.
Good morning. My name is Russell Trask, and I'm here today to speak to you a little bit about freedom of speech. Humans are destined to repeat history over and over again. You're either hammering in the nails or you're hanging on the cross. People told lies, spread rumors about Jesus, whipped the crowd into a frenzy, handed them a hammer, and they crucified him, nailing him to a cross. Last week, the media lied about Trump, whipped the crowd into a frenzy, handed them the hammer. Then days later, Mueller took the hammer out of their hands of the frenzied crowd and corrected the media. About the same time, the media showed us 30 seconds of a 1 hour, 43-minute recording of high school students in Washington, D.C., whipped the school into a frenzy, threatening them with discipline, whipped the crowd into a frenzy, threatening them with death. Then only days later did they show us 60 seconds of the same film. That showed the media's lies and deceptions. I have no mercy for the news media that told lies, half-truths, and fiction, unlike some of you who have praised them in the recent past. Yes, words are like a sword. They cut like a knife. Which are you, hammering in the nails of lies? Or are you hanging on the cross of truth? And this is basically about freedom of speech. Because our freedom of speech is being denied to us in this country. Anybody who disagrees with the
your time,
left,
sir. If you could finish up quickly, I'd appreciate it.
Anybody who disagrees with the left, they're crucified. This is not the country we all know and love. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is going to be R.V. Ziegler. R.V. Ziegler from Vail. Okay, we'll hold on to this and try again before the end of before the end of call to the audience, but seeing no Mr. Ziegler, we're going to move on. Next speaker is going to be Isabel Garcia. Isabel, thank you for being here, spending your time with us one more time. And if you could give us your name for the record, you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Chair and members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity. I come today because I know there's been questions about the Community Safety Partnership Commission, of which I've been a member for a very brief time. I've only had opportunity for a very few meetings, but in those meetings, I find that it's essential that we continue with this commission, that this commission be able to review these grants and review the results, really, of what you saw during the examination of Operation Stone Garden funding. I have to say that I don't know why there is a question about why it's changing a role or even that it should continue to exist, given that it's an advisory group. An advisory group. You all make the decisions, and it would seem to me that you would want to take as much information from the community as possible. And I don't understand what the reasoning would be to stop it. Let me tell you, I'm at those meetings, and there's full police participation all around me. All around me. There's members, they're in the audience. So if you're afraid that somehow the community can, just erase the police presence, that's not true. Just being on the commission for these a month or so, I've been able to review some of the grants, and it's really vital that the community have an input and be able to have a commission where you actually study. Yeah, everybody can come in and study anything they want, but not if you're not for a purpose. And so it's really essential that we do this today. Racial profiling continues to be a big problem with the Pima County Sheriffs. I'm sorry to say, and I live in the county, and that is a reality. If you're not a member of that community of color, Ms. Miller, you're not going to know. I know you made a face, but you're not going to know what we face. It's really critical. Review the contents, performance measures, what equipment's being used and such. And the last thing I want to say, is I'm running out of time, is that it's very clear we all suffer from a lack of knowledge of history based on the speakers that spoke here earlier. I mean, you have absolutely no knowledge of history or what's going on today. But I want to go to Mr. Napier. Mr. Napier went to...
Excuse me, Mr. Score, you're out of order. I'm going to have you removed. If you continue, you're going to be removed.
And the sheriff, it's okay, Sheriff Napier has gone to D.C. over and over and over again. And while we try to work with the sheriff, it's really clear that he's not representing us. He went and he came back to tell us that we just don't understand what Trump means about the wall. He was one of 4 sheriffs that are wanting this wall and stuff. Only one of them is a border person, this sheriff from Santa Cruz County, and he said, this is crazy. The other 3 sheriffs don't know what they're talking about, and I'm sorry for taking more time.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Excuse me, just a moment, Ms. Miller. Mr. Score, you did it again. You need to leave the room.
Well, she addressed me.
You need to leave the room, sir. You're out of order.
Okay, I think it's out of order.
You need to leave the room.
Call me out and not let me address.
You need to leave the room, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Very good. Ms. Miller, please.
Mr. Chairman, since my name was invoked, I'd like to respond.
I don't think it was an attack, but okay, if you insist.
Is that
it's
okay?
If you insist, go ahead.
Okay. I would like to, you don't need to come up here. I'm not addressing you specifically. But what I don't appreciate is the fact that you're making presumptions about me and my family. You have no idea my racial background or any of my family.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Kessler, please, have a seat.
Yeah, and please, why don't we ask her to leave?
I asked her to be quiet.
Yeah,
please.
We asked the other
I've
gentleman
given
to
Roger
leave. It
plenty
looks
of
like
scores.
a little biased
Plenty
treatment
of
here.
chances, Ms. Miller. Please
And I
go
will
ahead.
tell you that this accusation on the Sheriff's Department, the racial profiling continues. No one, not one person, has provided any evidence whatsoever of that. And this is continuous accusations. It's unfair. It's outrageous to make those accusations. Where's the evidence? Where's the proof? I got some data from the sheriff that proved otherwise. So I wanted to address the fact that people are being called names up here. It is, no one calls you names. But it's okay for you to call names. And we're sick of it.
I don't think you were called any names. What I was going to do was, because I think you went beyond the bounds of just responding to an accusation against you. What I would do is I'm going to ask our counsel to please send us something in writing about what a response to an accusation, a call to the audience means, and how we can best address it correctly so that we make sure we're being fair with everybody, okay? Because it just seems like we go off the rails sometimes on that. Can you do that, Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, I can do that.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd appreciate that. Look forward to reading it. Our next speaker is going to be Brenda Wexler. Brenda, are you here? There you are. I knew you were hiding over there or sitting over there or something. If you could give me your name for the record, please, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Brenda Wexler, and I'm just feeling so uneasy in this country now because I feel for the first time ever that we're really losing our democracy. And I'm just anxious. I know I'm not the only one. I was at Barnes & Noble yesterday. If you look in the current affairs section, if you look in the social science section, you see lots of books about how democracy is dying in America, how fascism is on the rise. And I'm pleased to be before a diverse board like you guys are. I'm glad that you guys are part of the Pima County Board of Supervisors. I'm also pleased that you listened to 3 minutes of the audience's input. I can only imagine that you get up in the morning on a Tuesday when you have this group saying, I really don't want to see them again. I really don't want to hear about the bowling alley. I really don't want to hear about how much Huckleberry gets paid. I don't want to hear about Narcan. But I think that everyone in this country wants to matter. And giving them an opportunity to have input gives them at least the feeling that they do matter. And I want to say that I hope you continue with the CLEPC program. I think it promotes democracy, and I'm really here to say I think we can all learn from input. We can't say we know everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Our next speaker is going to be Ryan Kelly. Mr. Kelly, please come forward and give us your name for the record. Thank you for being here, and you have 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. My name is Ryan Kelly, and I live in Supervisor District 1. I don't know how to follow my friend Brenda. That was beautiful and well said. First of all, I'll quickly apologize for not being here 2 weeks ago. I had to miss it because of the birth of my nephew, so the streak has been broken.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I also wanted to quickly, before I get into my little spiel, thank the American Heart Association. I too wanted to be at the Martin Luther King Jr. Festivities and march yesterday and was unable to because of some health complications with my grandmother's heart, and I appreciate that work. So, to business, the CLEPC Commission. So much to say, 2 minutes, 12 seconds to say it. This conversation has been an interesting one, and what's spun out of the and been birthed out of the Stone Garden conversation right here with our Board of Supervisors for many months now has real potential to build something healthy in this community, and CLEPC is laying that groundwork. Like Brenda said, that's direct democracy embodied. Steve Diamond and I were in a conversation this past weekend, and we were talking about these dynamics of when we have opposing political ideologies and how we address specifically law enforcement. And CLEPC, as has been labeled by some of the members of this board as being anti-cop, is not that at all. It's actually pro-people. And I think that's a proper framework that we all need to look at this. There are plenty of law enforcement agencies and perspectives represented in that commission, and that conversation is a healthy one, and conversation is healthy for democracy. So to abolish the CLEPC is just outrageous. And quickly in my last minute, I also wanted to remain to have something remain on the radar of all of you, and that is the House Bill 2001, which was introduced at this new legislative session at our state government level by Representative Fincham. which would basically strip all of your power over the overseeing of federal grants with our sheriff's departments. That also would end the conversation of the CLEPC. That's also anti-democratic, and we should all stand opposed to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Appreciate you being here. Mr. Ziegler, I called you earlier, and I think you're back here in the room now. Do you want to come up and make your comments now, sir? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought maybe it was you. I was just checking to see if I could.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Our next speaker is going to be Kristen Randall then. Kristen, please come forward, and you have 3 minutes to address the board. And thank you for being here with us today. And I know that's not an ASU scarf around your neck, but...
Gryffindor. It's my house.
I'm just teasing.
Representing here.
You got to do that. I understand. I understand.
I don't only know Star Wars jokes.
Yeah, oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm not doing Harry Potter jokes today, though. Sorry. That was it. That's all you get.
Those are over. Thank you. Please.
My name is Kristen Randall. I'm a resident of District 2. I also missed last meeting, but it was not for the birth of a baby, but it was for the furloughed federal employee resource fair that I helped organize with the Pima Area Labor Federation. So although we might receive back pay, some of us will not. If you're a contract worker, you will not be receiving back pay. If you rely on federal government workers for your business, you will not be receiving back pay. And so it's a hard time. The bills are still coming in, and the paychecks are not. So Pima County One Stop has been amazing, so thank you all for that. That's not why I am here, though. I do want to talk about CLEPC. I am a CLEPC member. I'm proud to be a CLEPC member and appointed by Supervisor Valadez. I think CLEPC is more necessary now than ever as we have this deeply polarized country. This is a place where we can come together with different philosophies and talk about things. We need this place as an exchange of ideas. Supervisor Valadez presented the ideal framework in his submission last week on Wednesday. And so our members are going to be coming up. We have 2 different proposals that we have that kind of go off of that. They just sort of tweak it a little bit and give a little feedback. And so we have a few people who will be introducing that. The reason why we have 2 proposals, Steve will talk about this a little bit more in depth. We were unsure of Mr. Flagg's opinion. I think that was not released to the public. 2 meetings ago, Supervisor Bronson asked for if the board is allowed to make recommendations to the sheriff. I believe that's what the legal opinion is on. Since we don't know what that's what he said, that's why we have 2 proposals. So proposal B is tied to grants. It follows more closely what Supervisor Valadez's framework was that he submitted. So take a look at that. We did, and on that one, as a commissioner, I just want to say that maybe we want to look at making it a little bit more narrow. If we're looking at all grants, we're looking at ear protection, things like that. Maybe you don't necessarily want to have the commission looking at stuff like that. I'm not sure how that could play out. That's just a recommendation. We were looking at things like ear protection grants and you know. I did talk with Sheriff Napier last week. It was on a different matter, but he did bring up the commission, and he does feel that it's important. He wants it to be this exchange of ideas and a dialogue, and he's really open to taking recommendations from us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate you being here, spending your time. Our next speaker is going to be Steve Diamond. Steve, if you please come forward. Thank you for being here once again and spending your time with us. You have 3 minutes to address the board, but only if you give us your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steve Diamond. I'm speaking on behalf of Justice Alliance, and there are others who will continue after I run out of time. We're presenting our recommendations, which you also have in writing in front of you, about the continuing role, scope, and mission of the CLEPC. We prepared 2 versions of our recommendations, as Kristen said, because we don't yet know the contents of Mr. Flagg's latest opinion, and we recognize there have been differences of opinion on that matter. One version limits the Commission's scope to implementation of federal grants to the PCSD. The other version is broader, and we prefer the broader version. Our own position on that question is clear and unequivocal. We believe that ARS 11251 means precisely what it says, that the board may supervise the official conduct of all county officers. The rest of the language in that section refers to fiduciary matters only in order to identify which officers the board may supervise. It in no way implies a narrow reading of official conduct to mean only conduct regarding money. The notion that your supervisory authority is limited to money matters only seems to be no more than an urban legend that has flourished simply because no one has seriously questioned it. Further, even if you decline to debunk the legend, common sense tells us that any person in the street lacking any statutory authority whatsoever is permitted to make recommendations to the sheriff about any aspect of his official conduct. Any such recommendations from this board will carry additional weight, even if you believe the sheriff is not compelled to follow them. So we believe the Commission should not make recommendations about grant approval. That function belongs to the Grants Management and Innovation Department. Instead, we would like to see a return to the mission originally proposed by Supervisor Valadez in February of last year, and with an expanded scope. That mission is to encourage and mediate dialogue between the public, the sheriff, and the board. Broadly speaking, the Commission should facilitate transparency and accountability from the PCSD regarding the impact of its activities on Pima County, especially with regard to cost, public safety, and discriminatory practices. It should solicit data and analysis about those activities. It should solicit input from PCSD, from the community, and from its members about those activities. It should submit reports to the board about its findings, and it should work with the board to craft recommendations to submit to the sheriff. With that said, here are the two versions of our detailed recommendations, beginning with the broader one, which we strongly prefer and we urge you to enact. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next speaker is going to be Johnny Simmer. Johnny, if you'd please come forward, and thank you for being here once again. And you have 3 minutes to address the board. Please give us your name for the record.
Thank you for being here to listen to us. I'm Janie Simner, and I'm here to present Justice Alliance's preferred broad scope recommendation for CLEP-C. The Commission's essential mission is to encourage and mediate dialogue between the public, the sheriff, and the Board of Supervisors. It has no authority to dictate policy, but it does have authority to facilitate transparency and accountability from the Pima County Sheriff's Department regarding the impact of its rules, regulations, policies, and activities on Pima County, especially with regard to fiscal responsibility, public safety, and discriminatory practices. For duties, CLEP-C ideally shall review PCSD policies, activities, and practices. They shall report to the board and the sheriff at intervals not exceeding 2 months. The Commission shall solicit comments from the board and the sheriff and facilitate dispersal of such comments to all interested parties. The Commission shall choose specific issues for review based on concerns that may be raised by the community, by Commission members, and by the Board of Supervisors. Their review may include measurable positive impact on public safety, included but not limited to interdiction of terrorists, human traffickers, and organized drug trafficking operations, verifiable compliance on the part of PCSD in training and practice with PCSD rules and regulations, fiscal impact on Pima County, collaboration between Pima County law enforcement officers and federal agents, including but not limited to Border Patrol, ICE, the FBI, the DEA, roles and responsibilities of all federal law enforcement officers and federal agents operating in Pima County, and any other related issues or questions that may arise as concerns of the community and/or at further direction of the board, and any other issues as deemed appropriate by the Commission. For implementation, the Commission shall consist of 15 members, as it does now, 3 appointed by each Pima County supervisor. Appointees need not reside in the supervisor's own district, and the Pima County Sheriff shall be a non-voting member and is encouraged to attend meetings whenever possible. PCSD and the board shall assemble and make available to the Commission data as requested by the Commission, including but not limited to daily activity reports, site stop ratios, citations and stops at checkpoints, racial data, and analyses derived from these data. The Criminal Justice Reform Unit shall provide personnel and technical assistance as required to meet Commission requests for data and analysis. And as we said, that's our preferred vision of what CLEP-C would do, but we also do have a proposal if it's decided that their role is required to be more limited. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate you being here. Our next speaker is going to be John Denker. Mr. Denker, if you'd come forward, and thank you for being here, sir. Appreciate it. And it's a lovely shirt. And if you would give us 3 minutes after giving us your name for the record, please, sir.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed the last meeting. I was, in fact, in Costa Rica hanging out with the sloths.
There you go, hanging out with the sloths.
My name is John Denker, speaking on behalf of Justice Alliance. The Commission's most limited core mission is to encourage and mediate dialogue between the public, the sheriff, and the Board of Supervisors. It has no authority to dictate policy. It facilitates transparency and accountability regarding the impact of PCSD rules, regulations, policies, procedures, and activities, especially with regard to fiscal responsibility, public safety, and discrimination. The limited duties are to review the conditions of, implementation of, and practices surrounding federal grants to the PCSD that involve collaboration with federal agencies. These grants include, but are not limited to, Stone Garden, HIDTA, GUIDEM, MacArthur, Border Strike Force, and SAMHSA. CLEP-C shall report to the board and to the sheriff at intervals not exceeding 2 months regarding the following issues related to each grant. Measurable positive impact on public safety, including but not limited to interdiction of terrorists, human traffickers, and organized drug trafficking. 2, verifiable compliance on the part of PCSD in training and in practice with PCSD rules and regulations with Chapter 10, Section 12, that is the policies and procedures on international border-related issues. 3, fiscal impact on Pima County, ensuring that each grant is, at worst, revenue neutral to county taxpayers. 4, collaboration between Pima County law enforcement and federal agents, including but not limited to Border Patrol, ICE, FBI, and DEA. 5, roles and responsibilities of all federal law enforcement officers and federal agents operating in Pima County with respect to traffic stops, checkpoints, etc. 6, any other related issues and questions that may arise as concerns of the community and or at the further direction of the board. 7, other issues as deemed appropriate or necessary by the Commission in order to fully understand the impacts as well as the benefits and the receipt of information, grants from federal agencies. As before, the Commission consists of 15 members, 3 appointed by each supervisor, not necessarily in a supervisor's district. The sheriff will be a non-voting member. PCSD and Board of Supervisors shall assemble and make available to the Commission data as requested by the Commission, including but not limited to activity reports, site stop ratios, citations, stops, checkpoints, racial data, and analyses derived from these data. The Criminal Justice Reform Unit shall provide personnel and technical assistance as required to meet the Commission requests for data and analysis. Emphasize that is the most limited version of the charter of the Commission, and we would prefer the more broad thing that Jenny spoke of.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you being here. Very good. Our last speaker is going to be Chris King. Mr. King, please come forward. Give us 3 minutes, and you give us your name for the record. And we appreciate you spending your time here with us, sir.
Good morning. A lot of times I don't actually put these together until I'm sitting here. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So, good morning, Supervisors. I'm still Chris King. I'm still a veteran, and more importantly to you, a resident and taxpayer of Pima County. I would like to thank the American Heart Association and their presentation and let them know that I am a recipient of their Heart Saver Award from when I was much younger in age. Many people come here to address you regarding issues that are outside of your purview. You're the supervisors for Pima County, not the entire United States. You're charged to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and Arizona. I've stood before you many times and addressed your responsibilities in relation to prioritizing your budget. It's apparent you have not learned how to do this appropriately when you lay off members of the community. As a community member that works with law enforcement in the field, specifically the Pima County Sheriff, I also have a degree in administration of justice. I take offense to the charges of racial profiling by their officers. I have never seen an instance of this, and I take serious offense to this accusation. And until there is verifiable proof, I demand a public apology. We come from different backgrounds. We must work together and live within our means. Focus on our neighborhood, not Washington, D.C. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. King. That concludes our call to the public. We don't have any executive sessions on the agenda or the addendum today, so that takes us to item 7, approval of consent.
Unless
Supervisor
someone
Bronson.
wishes to divide the question, I move consent in its entirety.
Sorry. A motion and a second to approve consent as in its entirety. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 8, unfinished business, Community Law Enforcement Partnership Commission. And this is the issue that a lot of people spoke about during call to the audience. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Valadez.
I submitted, and it was referenced to in the prior discussions during the call to the public, a submission of trying to clarify the role of the commission, and when I say commission, I mean the CLEPC. And one of the things that both in the discussion here on this dais prior to and in discussions I've had with different individuals, it has always been my goal to really get the commission to a point where it actually tends to be a well-educated body that is a good venue for the public, number one, the board and the sheriff to really kind of have a discussion amongst a body that is familiar with the issues involving law enforcement, policy, community safety, public safety, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But as I also stated in my memorandum that is in the back of my material dated January 25th, or excuse me, 15th, one of the issues right now that I need to get more comfortable with is really one of timeliness. While eventually, as a long-term goal, I think a lot of the issues that were brought up in the dual proposal by Justice Alliance tend to be very good ones, and ones that I certainly am very open to that discussion. Right now, I think we need to streamline the grant recommendation and advisory role process first. Once that has been established, I think we can move on to discussions of other items, so that we're not putting the horse before the cart, or I always get that backwards. So I think part of the discussion right now, we've heard from some of the members that they only want to review certain types of grants, and that is fine, and I think that's probably where we're at. But I'd like to see that as a recommendation coming to this board from the CLEPC of the types of grants you wish to review, and others that you will deem automatically recommended in favor of approving, so that it's not this board dictating the CLEPC, but CLEPC saying this is what we'd like to see. In terms of some of the other issues, I made notes to myself as part of the discussion was having, and I think it's probably Steve and the rest of the gang time that we sit down and have a meeting on kind of that discussion. But I'm not ready to move forward on adding to that responsibility, because part of what I'm also recommending is a 30-day limit to get a recommendation back to this body. So when the clerk gets the grant information, the clerk of the board gets the grant information from the sheriff's department or our respective grant review office, that the 30-day clock begins. And I want to see a recommendation back to this body, one way or the other, about the recommendation from CLEPC in that 30-day time limit. Once we get that process rolling, as well as the recommendations from the CLEPC telling us what kinds of grants there's an automatic recommendation in favor of approving, then we can start having the discussion about adding to that. But until such time, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, and frankly, we could be putting so much on the table that we're not going to get the principal mission, which was the grant review and recommendation, done. And I don't want to do that because I almost feel like we're setting the commission up for failure of that. But once we get that streamlined, then we can have that discussion, because I think that some of the ideas you're recommending are really good. My recommendation, and I guess it's by way of motion, is that we continue the CLEPC committee right now, as it's outlined in my memorandum, adding to it that 30-day time limit to get a recommendation back to this body. Once we get that streamlined, then let's go ahead and start having that second part of the discussion and move forward. So that's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second for purposes of discussion, because I think you also, and excuse my voice, I think you also mentioned that you wanted recommendations from CLEPC about which grants, and is that subsumed in your motion or not?
I apologize. Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. And then, well, go ahead. Yeah.
Supervisor Christie.
Some weeks ago, I made the position clear that I was in favor of completely disbanding CLEPC. As one who's participated and attended practically every one of those CLEPC meetings, my position has not changed. I feel that the function of this commission is for one purpose and one purpose alone, and that is to provide a forum to protest police involvement and policing in general along the border among much vaster immigration issues. It's become dysfunctional. The areas of decision have been ground down to none at all. The only positive thing I've seen so far in these presentations is that there's an actual recommendation that the sheriff attend the meetings. At several of the meetings I attended of CLEPC, there was a real question and a real protest that the sheriff shouldn't be there at all. So it's somewhat reassuring to see that they're allowing the sheriff to be there. Secondly, the sheriff should have the independence to decide whether or not the grants are suitable for his department to accept or not. It should not be the purview of this board, and it certainly should not be the purview of people who have no experience, no understanding, or no knowledge of the grant system for law enforcement. Law enforcement officials in general, and the sheriff in particular, should have the sole responsibility of determining whether or not a grant should be accepted or not. Third and finally, if the sheriff determines that he likes something along the lines in the format of a CLEPC, perhaps a Citizens Advisory Committee, he certainly has the opportunity and the ability to create his own advisory committee, if that's what he so desires. But I do not believe that the Board of Supervisors needs or should have any involvement in any kind of oversight of this nature. It should be left to the experts, which are the law enforcement community. And if the sheriff so deems that he would like to encourage community involvement, so be it, but that's up to the sheriff, not to the Board of Supervisors. And it's backed up by the fact that CLEPC recommendations are not binding. They have no teeth. So consequently, why bring this board into it when it has no business being involved in it? And the same can apply to a community advisory committee of some sort that the sheriff can put together. The sheriff can listen to these issues. He can take or reject the recommendations, and he does not need the Board of Supervisors to be involved in this. And so my recommendation is the same one that I made a couple of weeks ago, that CLEPC be completely disbanded and removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christie. I'm going to make some, oh, you want to go, Supervisor Miller? Go ahead. No, please. I'll defer to you.
Okay. I agree wholeheartedly with Supervisor Christie. It's why I seconded his motion that he made to disband. This commission is disruptive. It is dysfunctional. When you have members of the commission accusing sheriff deputies, I watch videos of the meeting, I have my staff go, and I've been here many, many times. These accusations come up constantly. The racial profiling. We heard it again today. Zero evidence, folks. That's what we need is evidence. And I have gotten data from the Sheriff Department which shows the opposite. There's very little issues with the function of the Sheriff Department, which is why I get so offended at these types of accusations. Unless you have evidence, how dare you accuse our Sheriff Department, our deputies, ICE, Border Patrol, any of them, of racial profiling. That is obstructionism, it is interference, it is disruptive, it is incitement. That is what it's all about, folks. It is incitement. And this community needs to come together. We don't need any more of that. And making assumptions about people and their background because of their skin color is wrong. You don't know my background. No one knows my background or what my ethnic makeup is just by looking at my skin. So be careful with that. We've heard this on the radio where a woman accused a man of having white privilege and he was black because he didn't sound black. That's why that happens. So be very careful. I have no problem with transparency. If the sheriff wants to get input from this group, they can sit in the room and have these discussions. That is good. That is opening up to the community. But no one, and especially this group, is going to filter my communications between me and the sheriff. I'll communicate directly with him as my duties require me to do. I am not going to communicate with a group that makes these kinds of accusations. Shame on you without any evidence. If you've got evidence, I'd love to see it. Let's prosecute some people if you've got evidence. The sheriff communicates directly with the Board of Supervisors, and that's the way it should be. This commission has proven that they have an agenda, and I agree with Supervisor Christie. It should be disbanded. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Christie and Supervisor Miller have some interesting notions about how the community should interact with law enforcement. But before we get to that, I would like to say Supervisor Miller's right. Because as Latinos, we've been complaining about people thinking that we're one thing or another based on our skin color for years. And there was actually a very rigid system in Mexico in the day that was based on skin color as well. And we're done with that. We're everywhere. We're in every segment of society. We intend to continue to be in every segment of society, and we intend to continue moving forward as Americans and as the great Americans that we are, to be quite honest with you all. So, that's it. Ooh, it's so painful to hear supervisors sitting here talking about the fact that the public should have no right to discuss with the sheriff the actions of his department or the actions of grants that are taken. That's returning to the 1950s, returning to an era of segregation and horribleness that took place in this country, and we need to step away from that and start recognizing that transparency and community involvement is really the most important thing that we can do to help our sheriffs and our police officers in any law enforcement agency do a good job. Supervisor Valadez's comments are well taken. We need to have some focus, and I think we can do that. The CLEPC is important to us. It's absolutely a critical function, but I think it needs to continue on and actually become more powerful and more important, in the sense that what we really need is a law enforcement review panel like every other city or county has pretty much in the United States, so that we can review any actions taken by our officers or by our deputies in an objective manner. A law enforcement review panel that's independent of the powers of the sheriff. We have to have that kind of liberty. We have to have that kind of ability for transparency and for questioning these things. And racial profiling, you know, whether we have evidence of it or not, is an issue that's really hurting our country everywhere. And it's very sad. And it happens quick. And there's not much evidence, and there's not much you could say. I've seen it happen 1,000,000 times in my own life and in other lives here. It's okay to talk about those things and make sure that we do our best to put policies in place that prevent everybody, that provide some protection for people as well. You see, it's not just protecting our officers, but it's also protecting the public, and we need to do that. And the way to do that, the pathway to do that is through appropriate dialogue. It's through consistent, meaningful change that takes place. It comes from the public having a voice in law enforcement matters. It's not that hard. It's not threatening at all. This is nothing that's going to destroy the liberty that we share here in this county or infringe upon the authority of the sheriff of Pima County. All of that is misplaced. That's not what we are headed for. What we're heading for is legitimate dialogue, legitimate concern, systemic objective review, and independence from the law enforcement agencies so that those members of that committee can act freely. That's what we need to get to. And I think some of our speakers today have some great ideas about that. I'm glad to hear that Supervisor Valadez is open to suggestions from the commission, and I highly suggest the commission come forward with some suggestions to us, because I think that'll help us all get to a place where we can start to make better decisions and have a better understanding about how our community interacts with our sheriffs, how we interact with each other, and ultimately how we review the grants and awards that are given to the Pima County Sheriff's Department. There's nothing insurrectionist in any of this. There's nothing bad in any of this. This doesn't need to be the War of the Roses or the Edmund Pettus Bridge or any of that. This is just moving forward in today's times with what is appropriate, with what is right, and not returning to an age of darkness where there was no discussion, where there was no fair treatment of people, where there was not an opportunity for people to speak freely, independent of the fears that we have sometimes when we have to have difficult conversations with law enforcement, because it is intimidating, and we need to recognize that. Thank you. Supervisor Bronson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clearly there are policy differences on this board, but I think what we hear from both sides are wanting transparency and accountability. I think CLEPC is part of that process of assuring, whether it's law enforcement, development services, the health department, we need more transparency and accountability in government, and I think we hear both sides of the aisle saying that. So that's why, one of the reasons, but not the only, that I'll be supporting Supervisor Valadez's motion. And by way of housekeeping, there was one item I think that several of the speakers mentioned, and that was an internal memo from our county attorney regarding the role of supervisors vis-a-vis row officers, and that was an internal memo, and as I recall, it has not been made public. Am I wrong, Mr. Flagg?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bronson, that's correct. The most recent memo, there's been no vote whether to waive the privilege.
Okay, I intend, I can't do it today, but I intend to place that item on the agenda for our next meeting, because I don't think I could ask for that today. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Bronson, I think it's within the scope of the agenda item that's on for today, so I think in terms of the open meeting law, that would be an acceptable motion.
Okay, we've got one motion on the floor. I intend to make another motion once that motion is voted on, or unless you want to amend your. Okay, then I'd like to amend your motion to include release of your most recent memo.
Mr. Chairman, I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. Further discussion? If not, we have a motion on the floor. Does everybody understand the motion? Supervisor Valadez.
Mr. Chairman, one more thing. As I referred to, and obviously has been alluded to by several speakers, I'm going to ask that this information memorandum from the Justice Alliance be made part of the record as well, so that both the public and everyone else has access to it.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor. Okay, roll call, please.
Supervisor Bronson?
Aye.
Supervisor Christie?
No.
Supervisor Miller?
No.
Supervisor Valadez?
Aye.
Chairman Elias?
Aye. Motion carries 3-2. Very good. We're on to Development Services. Item number 9, Final Plat with Assurances. Case number P18FP00025.
Move the item.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to Industrial Development Authority, item 10, including resolution 2019-6. Chair will move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. Item 11 has been removed. Item 12, real property, surplus property.
Move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to hearings. These are franchises, licenses, and permits. We only have one liquor license, item 13. Seeing no one come forward, I'll close the public hearing. I'll move to close the public hearing and approve item 13.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to Development Services. These are hearings once more. Item 14 is a rezoning. Case number P18RZ00007, Fimbres, South Victor Drive rezoning.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no one in the audience who wishes to address us in opposition to this item at this time, I move to close public hearing and approve P18RZ00007, Fimbres, South Victor Drive rezoning, subject to standard and special conditions as recommended by both the commission and staff.
Second. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. Item 15 is a hearing rezoning, or a rezoning hearing. That didn't come out right, did it? No. Rezoning hearing. Case number P18RZ00009, Ventana Canyon Car Wash, LLC.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller, please.
If no one wishes to speak on this item, I'd like to close the public hearing and approve P18RZ00009, Ventana Canyon Car Wash, subject to standard and special conditions as recommended by the Zoning Commission as well as staff.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 15, the rezoning P18RZ00009. Discussion, objections, hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 16. This is a rezoning hearing also, case number P18RZ00010, Jacome East Old Spanish Trail rezoning. I do have one speaker card that's been submitted. I'm going to ask the speaker to speak, and then we can go to discussion and action. Is that okay? Very good. Our speaker is going to be Dale Murray. Mr. Murray, thank you for being here and spending your time patiently with us today. You have 3 minutes to address the board. Please give us your name for the record.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Dale Murray. I reside at 2850 South Avenida Los Reyes. The furthest boundary of my property is within the 1,000 feet marker of the subject property asking for rezoning. I purchased this property in 1999, built my dream home. I got it because somebody had tried to survey it into 3 1-acre lots, but could not get the zoning. So it was available, which was excellent for me. So I built my dream home. Now I keep seeing the creep of the C1, CR1 homes coming in. There was a boundary established, I understood, and that area would never be crowded with 1 acre or less homes. But I see it happening. You have a request before you today for another one. My heart goes out to Mr. Huckabee and his financial burdens. I too am facing financial burdens. But I'm asking you not to approve this zoning and ruin and deface our property and our value even further. However, if you do decide to rezone and move his property to C1, then I'll be following up and asking you to zone my property C1 because I too am having financial difficulties and I need to sell a 1 acre lot that I allowed as I designed and laid out my home and driveway. I know my neighbors will be angry. I hate this. I don't want to see crowding, but just like Mr. Huckabee, I may have to for survival. So I guess that's about all I need to say. Thank you for your time. I'm disappointed to hear all of the accusations to this committee of who you have at heart. And I too am frustrated with our government, our failure to look after the common people on the federal, state, city, and now the county level. So I'm asking you, look after your people that represented and elected you to your positions, not outside interest. And we don't need further crowding in this area.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chris, have there been a lot of cases over there?
Mr.
Similar
Chairman,
to this?
Mr. Chairman, there is currently already a patchwork of CR1 and SR property. I wouldn't say there's been a lot of rezoning out there, but there certainly is significant CR1 or 1 acre lots already out there. The long-range plan,
To the west of this property.
the long-range plan for this area is for a 1 acre lot. So this rezoning is exercising the long-range plan. Directly to the north, across the street is the city. Their zone is RX1. That's the equivalent, direct equivalent to the CR1. So we would argue it's a compatible land use in conformance with a long-range plan.
Understand. Thank you.
Moving the line, you keep drawing the line and you keep moving it. That's what I'm objecting to.
I understand,
Draw
sir.
the line and hold it.
I understand. If you have something else to add, I'm going to ask you to please ask me so I can have you come up to the microphone. I don't want you making comments that aren't actually on the record. Okay, sir? But I'm fine with what you said. I understand. I heard you.
Do you want me to repeat it on the record?
No, that's okay. I got it. I think everyone out here gets it. I'm just trying to make sure we do this properly, okay?
Mr. Chairman.
Then I'm going to have to ask you to come forward if you're going to respond again. Just a moment, Mr. Christie. Please come to the microphone. Give me your name again.
Thank you. I'm Dale Murray. What I forgot to say is there's a number of letters of objection to this. It hasn't been mentioned or shown. I gave you a copy of my letter to make sure. I didn't get it emailed till yesterday, so I brought a copy and I saw it handed out to each one of you.
Okay.
And my neighbor would have been here, but he's having his grandchild's due to be born today, so he couldn't come. But I've been to the other meetings and there's been serious objection.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. Supervisor Christie, go ahead.
Could the representative of the developer speak to this?
Certainly. How you doing today? Please give us your name for the record.
Good morning, Chair Elias and members of the supervisors here. I am Lexi Well, and I am a project manager at the Planning Center, which is located here in downtown Tucson, 2 East Congress. And as Chris had mentioned, I have a zoning map up here that really gets to looking at the existing zoning in the area. And there is substantial RX1 or CR1 zoning in this area. And this property is being rezoned to correct a lot split that occurred in 2005. Mr. Hakame's stepfather initiated the lot split with the intention of doing a subsequent rezoning on it. However, his father passed away before that rezoning could occur. And again, this is just to rezone it to CR1 for one additional home. We've got rezoning conditions in place that will not allow a further lot split or any more than the one home to be put on there. So it is largely consistent with the surrounding SR zone property. It's just to correct an issue that occurred with the lot split. But it is equivocally zoned.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Christie.
Is there any situation in this process that can address and accommodate the gentleman that just spoke regarding this? Is this a cut and dry issue of zoning, or is it a matter of setbacks, or is it basically cast in stone here?
Supervisor Christie, I think that's probably a better question for our staff.
Yes,
to be honest with you. I don't want to put you on the spot in that way.
No, that's fine. Thank
Chris,
you.
please.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Christie, one thing to point out is the previous speaker talked about, honoring the line. In this case, the comprehensive plan, there is a line, and that line is Avenida Los Reyes. Everything to the west of it is 1.2, and that's what we're seeing before you today. Everything to the other side of that is 0.3. So that is the long-range plan. This request is actually much closer to an SR2 density. They're short by, I think, 400 square feet to come in actually at the SR2 zone. But because they're a little bit short, they're asking for a CR1 zone. With the rezoning, there will be conditions. One of the conditions will be this is only for one home. So although they have the acreage, potentially if the board approves of the CR1, they would have the acreage to the naked eye to have multiple homes. This process will lock them into that one home. In addition to that, there's a height limit condition and a setback condition regarding a driveway. So we think that the way the process is set up, it should address some of the concerns.
Supervisor Christie. Yeah, Mr. Murray, why don't you come up here, please? Yeah, because I was going to say this is one place, but we've already heard another gentleman say that he's interested in something similar. Please, Mr. Murray, go ahead.
My name is Dale Murray. I would like to clear something that Mr. Flagg just said. Everything west of Avenida Los Reyes is not CR1. May I point to the map?
Sure.
You guys see it?
Yep.
This is the property at question.
All right.
All of this blue area you see right here on my pen is Avenida Los Reyes.
Okay.
You see the blue area on this map? That's SR2.
Okay.
See it, Mr. Flagg?
Yep. No, it was Christopher Portier back there, but that's okay. We got voices coming from all over the place. Mr. Murray, we do the same thing. We blame the lawyers all the time.
I've got new glasses coming, but they're not here.
We blame the lawyers, and it's usually their fault. So,
sir, you see the blue and the yellow?
Yeah, we can see it.
The blue is the SR zone, the yellow is the CR1, and there's more blue than there is yellow.
Oh, very obviously.
I wanted to correct that statement.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller.
I have a question. To the gentleman's point, if this is going to eventually, Mr. Poirier, you said, be zoned to 1 house per acre. That's the long-range plan. That's the comprehensive plan, is to lower or increase the density. Then you're talking about this is like a specific isolated case here. Then it really seems to me that why don't we just rezone the whole area if that's the long-range plan, so it makes it fair and equitable to everyone, to his point.
The residents don't want it.
I hear you, but I'm just asking Mr. Poirier to comment on that.
Sure,
Chris, please.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller. The long-range plan is a policy document. So it says this is what things should look like over time. And then that's effectuated when individually property owners come in and request a rezoning. then during that process, there's certainly the public outreach, the public hearings where then neighbors then get to effectuate that specific request. So in this case, we have Mr. Hakimi coming in, paying the fees, working with the neighbors to try and get this rezoning that is compatible with a comprehensive plan, acceptable to the surrounding property owner. So that's the overall model is one where I would agree with you. You're right. That the long-range plan is visioning something different, but really it's going to be effectuated on a case-by-case basis. Could neighbors get together and come in and do one big rezoning? Yes, they could. Are there certain circumstances where the board has directed staff to zone property to be consistent with a comprehensive plan? It happens occasionally, but normally in a residential situation, it's done by a property owner.
Okay, so they could, individuals in the neighborhood could come in at a later date and request rezonings individually.
That's correct. So the speaker talked about, I just want to be clear, the long-range plan, not zoning, the plan west of Avenida Los Reyes is 1.2. That means anybody west of Avenida Los Reyes is eligible to come in and request a rezoning to CR1. Anyone east of Los Reyes, they would have to first amend the comprehensive plan separately. So the zoning and the planning are two different things.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments you'd like to make as the owner's representative?
Good morning. I'm Linda Morales with the
I
Planning
saw you
Center.
chewing gum back there.
Was I chewing gum too?
I'm just kidding. Yes, but it's okay.
Give the jaws a workout. Just to clarify some things that were said, Mr. Murray, and we've had many conversations with him. He's a very nice man, and we've tried to make put conditions onto the site that would help alleviate his concerns that this is going to proliferate smaller lots around. As Mr. Poirier pointed out, this is about a little over 1.6 acres, so it's considerably larger than a CR1. It was 126 square feet too small for an SH. So that's why we ended up with a CR1. But again, CR1, all that yellow you see on the map is all around. It's very similar. I'm aware of 3 protests. Mr. Murray does live down here, and we would certainly support him if he wanted to rezone to CR1. He does have CR1 adjacent to him. His neighbor was one of the other protests who lives on just under an acre on a CR1, and he was protesting because of the potential for proliferation of CR1, but that is his zone. The other protest was to the north of Old Spanish Trail in the city of Tucson. It's RX1, and again, a 0.9 acre lot. So we are considerably larger than that. This is a lot, like we said, that was created many years ago by Mr. Hakimi's father. The sale of this lot for the single house would allow him to stay on his family's property that they've had in the family for many years. And he would be very grateful for that opportunity to do that. It would be a custom home. The access would be a shared driveway with his house that comes out to Old Spanish Trail. So it doesn't come out anywhere near Mr. Murray's house. He won't probably be able to even see the house from his lot. We did have a lot of conversations with the neighbors to the east, and actually were able to alleviate any of their concerns. So we were happy to do that by moving a driveway off of the property line. We agreed to a setback for the driveway, and we agreed at the Planning and Zoning Commission to a single-story height limit as well for the site. So we feel like we've really tried to alleviate the concerns, and short of keeping it at SR, I'm not sure what else we could do to help Mr. Murray besides support him in a future rezoning.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Christie.
And I'm just putting this to the board and to the participants. Is there any point, or would there be any benefit to postpone this till the next meeting to allow for any kind of discussion in the interim?
Mr. Chairman, I think we've exhausted the discussion and the possibilities.
I think that's what I'm hearing from Mr. Murray back there and from the owner's representatives as well. You want to add one last thing? We're getting our exercise walking back and forth, huh, Mr. Murray?
I'll sit here next time.
You're going to sit with these guys.
Thank you. I'm Dale Murray. This driveway was brought up and mentioned, and I forgot to complain about that. This driveway, if I may point at the picture, this property originally had access over here through golf links, but when this area was all rezoned, somehow they blocked that off, and then they just put a driveway in here. If you'll notice, this intersection is a four-way intersection with a driveway coming into the center of it. That's the most dangerous driveway I've seen in Tucson. Now, I haven't seen them all, but I have to come in and out this way all the time, and that is very dangerous. I think it's illegal. I don't think it should have been done the first time, and if you read my paper, I have a complaint to you, board, for not doing your job to address the legalities and the safety of that driveway the first time. You have another opportunity here. The comment from transportation was no comment. Nobody looked at it. Nobody considered it. I want you guys to do your jobs.
Got it.
Protect us. Protect us.
I understand.
Thank you,
Chris,
sir.
you have a comment on that?
Mr. Chairman, nothing other than it's an existing driveway already serving what looks like one home, and then if this is approved, that driveway would then be serving two homes. Most of that easement is on the adjacent property. The connection point is already there and is already established by previous owners. It's, you know, we have much higher, more rigorous standards when we're bringing in more significant impact to a road, say with a subdivision, than we do with these one or two off situations.
I understand. All of that is true. What about safety issues that Mr. Murray brought up?
We increasing traffic.
Mr. Chairman,
because we really try and avoid that when we can, Chris, right?
Correct. I think when we have the ability through applying certain standards, say with a subdivision, we always do. But in this situation, regardless of the rezoning, it's an existing driveway. We do the best we can with the single one-offs or right-of-way use permits, but for the most part, it's an existing situation where we don't think is being made much worse.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller, please.
I'd like to ask Mr. Poirier, how long has that driveway been there? Was it there before that road was widened, or has it been there for just a short term, or has it been there for years?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, we'll do a quick once-over of the timing of it.
If I may, I believe we went back on aerials, and it's been in place since the 80s.
It sounds like it probably has.
And we did meet with transportation.
These are long-time homeowners.
Yeah, transportation
And it is very
approved it.
difficult, Mr. Murray, to have somebody move their driveway when it's existing already, and
But it went the other way.
I understand that. Understand.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Miller.
To his point, did this driveway just change directions, or is it in the same spot as it's, I'll address that to Mr. Poirier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just, because he was going to answer the other question. Was the driveway modified at all to accommodate this particular case?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Miller, it looks like it's in the same location.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay.
Where's Steve? Where's Steve?
He'll be back in a second. He excused himself for a moment. He'll be right back.
Finding Nemo.
Sure. Okay, Mr. Christie, we're pretty much done with the discussion and everything. If you have a motion you want to put on the floor?
If there's no further discussion, I would make the motion that we close public hearing and accept the recommendation of staff to the special conditions under rezoning number P18RZ000010, Hakami East Old Spanish Trail rezoning.
Subject to standard and special conditions as recommended by staff.
Correct.
Okay, if I understand your motion correctly, you're asking to close the public hearing and approve item 16, P18RZ000010, subject to a standard and special conditions.
Correct, sir.
Okay, very good. Discussion? Yep, is there a second? We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Motion carries unanimously. We're on to item 17. This is a hearing, a modification of a rezoning condition, case number C0983-94. Transamerica Title number 8155 Sunrise Drive.
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Miller.
if there's no one that wishes to address this item, I make a motion. I move to approve the modification of this rezoning condition CO983-94, along with special conditions as recommended by staff, and close the public hearing.
Okay, we have a motion to close public hearing. Approve item number 17, case number C0983-94, subject to the conditions offered by staff. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 18 has been continued. Item 19, this is a hearing zoning code text amendment, case number P18TA00008, food access number 3, community food pantry in rural homestead.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no one in the audience that wishes to address us on this item at this time, move to close public hearing and approve P18TA00008, food access number 3, community food pantry in RH rural homestead, GR1 rural residential, SH suburban homestead, TR transitional, and MU multiple use zones, as recommended by both staff and the commission.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve.
And approve ordinance 2019-5.
I was just going to add that. Thank you very much, Supervisor Bronson. Item 19, case number P18TA00008, including ordinance 2019-5. Discussion? Objections?
I object.
One objection noted for Supervisor Miller. Motion carries 4-1.
Mr. Chairman, item number 20, I move to close public hearing and approve ordinance 219-6.
A motion to approve item 20, including ordinance number 2019-6. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 21, this is a hearing, a code text amendment as well.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no one in the audience that wishes to address us on this item, I move to close public hearing and approve item 21 in ordinance number 2019-7.
Okay, we have a motion to close public hearing, approve item 21, including ordinance 2019-7. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're on to the addendum. First item is Justice of the Peace, Precinct 9. Just Honorable Maria Felix has retired. We thank her for her service and for her caring for people, and she's always been a good JP. We're very proud of the work that she's done. But she has submitted her resignation effective March 31, 2019, so we will need to create a selection process to fulfill the vacancy. I would suggest that we move along these lines in the selection process. 1, applicants for this position need to meet the following requirements: being 18 years of age or older at the time of appointment, registered to vote in that precinct, a resident of the precinct, same political party as the person vacating the office. In this case, that would be a Democrat. Secondly, the interested parties should file the following with the clerk of the board: a letter of interest, a resume, a financial disclosure statement. I would suggest the submission deadline be 5 p.m. Friday, February 8th, 2019. Clerk of the board will advertise the selection process in the Arizona Daily Star and the Daily Territorial January 28th and February 4th, 2019, and will post the information on the Pima County homepage. Information regarding how to submit public comments will be included in a copy of the district map. If requested, a forum of the candidates will be scheduled for Wednesday, February 13, 2019. I would highly urge us to have a hearing, and well, not a hearing, but a candidate forum. I think that's critical. Also, the board will make the appointment of the Justice of the Peace Precinct 9 at their meeting on Tuesday, March 5th, 2019. And the person selected will serve the remainder of the unexpired term, December 31, 2020. So they would serve until December 2020. And a new election will be held in the general election in November 2020.
So moved.
Second. And
Motion
we're-
and a second.
Don't we have to accept the resignation also?
Yes.
Yes.
If you include that as part of the motion? Okay.
Yes. So we have a motion on the floor to accept the resignation and follow the process as I outlined, with the inclusion of a public forum for the candidates. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 2 is Clerk of the Board, petition for relief of taxes. Chair will move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're on to item 3, Fair Horse Racing Meet 2019. Chair will move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. We're on to Community Services, Employment and Training. This is to provide an unemployment insurance data sharing agreement. No cost, 10-year item. Chair will move the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 7 has been continued to to February 19th, 2019. Yep, I understand. We're on item 5. If there's no objections from any members, I'll go ahead and move the remainder of the addendum.
Second.
Okay? This is to approve the remaining parts of the addendum that we have not heard, starting with item 5 and excluding item 7. Discussion? Objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Hearing no objections, this meeting stands adjourned.